What if the person meant to protect you was actually waiting for a reason to hurt you? Officer Daniel Hargreave had a spotless record. 7 years on the force, commendations for community engagement. Parents trusted him, kids waved when he drove by. But behind closed doors, something was wrong. Late-night patrols, unreported stops, body cameras mysteriously turned off. Residents of Brookdale's East Side started whispering. People talked about being stopped for looking suspicious, about being shoved, threatened, sometimes beaten, then warned to stay quiet. No reports were filed, no complaints stuck. Every victim had a record, or no witnesses, or too much fear. And Daniel? He joked about it at the precinct, called it stress relief, said some people needed to be taught a lesson. What no one knew yet was that his biggest mistake was assuming no one was watching, because someone was. The stops followed a pattern. Late evenings, dim streets, one person, no dashcam footage saved. Daniel would pull someone over, not for speeding, not for a broken light, but for attitude. Witnesses later described the same behavior. He ordered people out of cars aggressively, hands already on his baton, voice calm, almost bored. Then came the threats. If you run, I'll ruin your life. If you complain, no one will believe you. Internal Affairs received anonymous tips. But every time, Daniel's reports were clean. His partner was always temporarily unavailable. Supervisors backed him without question. Statistically, excessive force complaints are hardest to prove without video, and Daniel knew that. What he didn't know was that technology doesn't belong only to police anymore. And one ordinary neighbor had just installed a new security camera. It was a Thursday night, quiet, almost boring. Daniel stopped a man named Marcus Lee outside an apartment complex. Marcus had no warrants, no weapons, no history of violence. Neighbors heard shouting, then a loud thud. Daniel slammed Marcus against a fence, punched him twice, dragged him by the collar. Marcus begged, promised cooperation, asked why this was happening. Daniel laughed. According to later testimony, he said, "Because I can." What Daniel didn't notice was a small red light glowing from a second-floor window. A neighbor's camera, installed just days earlier after a package theft. It captured everything: the punches, the threats, the smile. And that footage was about to do what years of complaints couldn't. The neighbor almost deleted the footage. At first, it looked unreal. A uniformed officer, clear strikes, no resistance. But when he zoomed in, there was no doubt. He backed the file up, sent copies to 2 friends, then anonymously to a local journalist. By Monday morning, Internal Affairs had no choice. The video was already spreading. Frame by frame, investigators watched Daniel's face, calm, controlled, enjoying it. His official report claimed suspect resisted arrest. The video showed Marcus standing still. This wasn't excessive force, it was assault. And suddenly, other victims came forward. Different dates, same street, same officer. The pattern was undeniable. And the department realized they didn't just have a bad cop problem, they had a cover-up. Daniel was suspended, not fired. The department released a statement. An internal review is underway. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted. Union lawyers, quiet warnings, lost files. Supervisors claimed they never saw the signs. Partners said they didn't remember the incidents. Body cam failures were labeled technical errors. Marcus was charged anyway, resisting, disorderly conduct. It was a message, stay quiet. But the video changed the balance. Public outrage grew. Protests formed. The media demanded answers. Daniel stopped smiling. For the first time, he looked scared. Because the question was no longer whether he'd hurt people. It was how many and who helped him get away with it. The neighbor who recorded the video thought anonymity would protect him. He was wrong. Within days, a police cruiser began parking across from his apartment, not responding to calls, just watching. Then came the knock. 2 officers, polite smiles, casual questions about his camera system. They asked who had access, who else might have copies, whether he understood the serious consequences of spreading misinformation. That night, his car was keyed. The next morning, he found a citation on his door for a code violation that didn't exist. This wasn't subtle, it was intimidation. Federal statistics show that witnesses in police misconduct cases are often pressured before charges are filed, and now he was living that reality. But instead of backing down, he did something unexpected. He contacted a civil rights attorney and handed over everything, including footage the department didn't know existed. The video cracked the wall. But the next break came from inside the department. Officer Rachel Nguyen had worked patrol with Daniel years earlier. She remembered the jokes, the threats, the way complaints disappeared. She'd stayed quiet, like most officers do, out of fear, out of loyalty, out of survival. But when she saw the footage, she recognized the pattern immediately. She contacted Internal Affairs, then, quietly, the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. She brought call logs, shift schedules, emails showing supervisors reassigning Daniel after complaints instead of disciplining him. This wasn't one rogue officer, it was systemic shielding. According to DOJ reports, over 60% of police misconduct cases involve prior ignored warnings. Rachel knew the risk. Whistleblowers often lose careers. But she also knew something else. If she stayed silent, she'd be complicit. Federal involvement changed everything. Unmarked cars appeared. Subpoenas followed. Hard drives were seized. Unlike Internal Affairs, the FBI didn't ask politely. They demanded records. Body cam logs, deleted footage, union communications. Investigators discovered a disturbing pattern. Camera malfunctions always occurred during Daniel's use of force incidents. Statistically impossible. Legally damning. Text messages showed supervisors advising him how to word reports, which phrases to use, which details to omit. This wasn't negligence, it was coordination. Marcus's charges were quietly dropped. Other victims were contacted. Medical records lined up with dates Daniel worked alone. The case expanded beyond assault. Now it included civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. And the department realized this was no longer something they could contain. Daniel Hargreave finally faced a courtroom, but not the one he expected. This wasn't internal discipline. This was federal court. Prosecutors played the neighbor's footage first, unedited, uninterrupted. The jury watched Daniel strike Marcus, heard the laughter, saw the lack of resistance. Then came the whistleblower testimony. Rachel described the cover-ups, the pressure, the warnings to let it go. Defense attorneys argued stress, split-second decisions, officer safety. But the video didn't support any of it. Experts testified that Daniel's actions violated department policy, state law, and constitutional protections. When the verdict came, it took less than 4 hours. Guilty. Not just of assault, but of abusing power under color of law. Daniel was sentenced to prison. But the damage went far beyond one man. 3 supervisors resigned. 2 were charged. The chief stepped down under pressure. The city paid millions in civil settlements. Training protocols were rewritten. Body cam policies changed. The neighbor moved away. Rachel left policing altogether. Marcus still has scars, physical and psychological, from a night he did nothing wrong. Studies show most police corruption cases aren't exposed by systems. They're exposed by ordinary people who refuse to look away. This case wasn't about one violent officer. It was about silence, about what happens when power goes unchecked. And it leaves one final question. How many cases like this were never caught on camera? Daniel's conviction didn't end the story. From prison, he filed an appeal. His lawyers claimed the video was misleading, that stress and fear justified his actions. At the same time, witnesses began receiving messages, anonymous emails, late-night phone calls, warnings to stop talking. Rachel noticed a car following her after work. The neighbor received a cease and desist letter for defamation. This wasn't random, it was retaliation. According to national data, retaliation occurs in over half of police misconduct cases after convictions. Federal prosecutors intervened quickly. Protective orders were issued. Phones were traced. The messages led back to a former union representative, acting unofficially. The appeal failed. The judge ruled the video was clear, the conduct criminal, and the abuse undeniable. Daniel would serve his full sentence. But the pressure campaign revealed something darker. The system still hadn't learned its lesson. 6 months later, an internal memo surfaced. It was anonymous, sent to multiple journalists at once. The memo detailed years of complaints against Daniel, all flagged, all reviewed, all dismissed. Supervisors were warned. Command staff knew. No one acted. One line stood out. Force incidents are manageable if documentation is consistent. That sentence changed everything. The memo included attachments, emails, calendar notes, and a spreadsheet titled Problem Officers. Daniel wasn't the only name on it. The department denied its authenticity until metadata confirmed it came from an internal server. Public trust collapsed overnight. Protests returned. City Council called emergency hearings. Federal oversight was discussed openly. What started as one camera clip had now exposed an entire culture of protection, and there was no way to put it back. The case went national. Major networks ran the footage, blurred, slowed, analyzed. Civil rights groups cited it as a textbook example of unchecked power. Experts explained how misconduct escalates when early warnings are ignored, how patterns matter more than single events. The Department of Justice opened a formal investigation into the city's police department. This meant consent decrees, mandatory reforms, and years of monitoring. Recruitment dropped, officers resigned, public cooperation with police declined sharply. Daniel's name became shorthand, not for corruption alone, but for failure at every level. Marcus testified before a federal panel. He didn't ask for revenge, he asked for accountability. His words echoed nationwide. This only stopped because someone pressed record. That sentence stayed with people, because it raised an uncomfortable truth. Investigators reviewed older cases. Stops without footage. Injuries without reports. Charges dropped quietly. They identified at least 9 incidents with striking similarities. Same officer, same neighborhoods, same missing evidence. Some victims had moved, some refused to relive it. One had died years earlier. No camera, no justice. Studies show video evidence increases conviction likelihood by over 80% in misconduct cases. Without it, truth becomes negotiable. The neighbor's footage wasn't just proof of one crime, it was proof of how many others were never documented. The department implemented new policies: automatic camera activation, independent audits, civilian review boards. But reforms don't erase damage, they only acknowledge it happened. Years later, people still ask about the case. Not because it was rare, but because it was caught. Daniel Hargreave will be remembered as the officer who crossed a line. But history remembers the neighbor, the whistleblower, and the camera. This story wasn't about brutality alone. It was about boredom turning into cruelty, authority turning into entertainment, silence turning into protection. Police corruption doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks routine, unquestioned, normalized, until one person refuses to look away. The most unsettling part isn't what was recorded, it's what never was. So the final question remains, not just for this city, but for every community. How many stories like this ended differently because no camera was watching? If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's start the conversations that matter, the ones that lead to real change. And if you'd like more stories that challenge us, inspire us, and remind us of what we're capable of when we stand for what's right, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to light.